3/4 of US states have legalized marijuana. The recreational market is worth $15 billion, but the use, sale, and possession of cannabis is still prohibited by federal statute. This has created an absurd disconnect that needs to be fixed. The US Senate is about to vote on the MORE Act. It'll remove cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act and remove convictions of nonviolent marijuana offenders. And if you could vote on it directly, would you vote for it or against it? If you're new to my content, One Direct Democracy is a movement for upgrading the global democratic system by taking power away from the politicians and putting it in the hands of the people with direct democracy. It'll also eliminate left and right politics. I've created the technology and a plan for how to make it work. If you want more information, check out the links in the description. For each episode, I'll pick an important issue, outline the problem, talk about the solutions, and then you can decide how you would vote. In this case, we'll be talking about whether to decriminalize cannabis. Okay, if you're just looking for another talking head that isn't interested in actually doing anything, you're in the wrong place. If you want to be part of the solution, let's get into it.
And I think the big thing is if you step back for a second, whether it's the MORE Act, the Safe Bank Act, or full legalization, lawmakers got to get the message. This is what constituents want. This is what consumers want, and why it's good for the economy, why it's good out there. The Canadian market, which is now legalized for 3 years, it's contributed over $18 billion of taxes, over 150,000 jobs, $6 billion in infrastructure. So with that, constituents want that. Lawmakers got to listen to their constituents.
Okay, so how many states have legalized marijuana? According to this article from CNET, 37 states have legalized medical use of cannabis. In addition, the District of Columbia and the territories of Puerto Rico, Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, and the US Virgin Islands have all legalized medical marijuana. Each jurisdiction has its own criteria regarding what conditions cannabis can be prescribed for, and what amounts and what the process is for issuing medical marijuana licenses to qualified residents. Okay, how many states have legalized recreational use of marijuana? According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, 18 states have legalized the adult use of marijuana for recreational purposes. So what does the federal law say about marijuana? Under the Controlled Substances Act of 1970, the Drug Enforcement Agency still classifies cannabis as a Schedule I drug, with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. Other Schedule I drugs include heroin and LSD, while cocaine is listed as a Schedule II drug. Now this is at the heart of the problem. The federal rules are in conflict with the state rules. This is what President Barack Obama tried to do about it. In 2013, President Barack Obama directed the Justice Department to defer to state authorities in jurisdictions that had legalized marijuana, based on assurances that those states will impose an appropriately strict regulatory system. Known as the Cole Memorandum, this guidance was rescinded in 2018 by Jeff Sessions, Attorney General under President Donald Trump. So Obama created a temporary and practical fix, and then Donald Trump went and effed it up again. Okay, so what is the Marijuana Opportunity and Reinvestment Expungement Act, otherwise known as the MORE Act? The MORE Act would abolish federal criminal penalties for those growing, possessing, or distributing cannabis and expunge non-violent cannabis convictions. It would also institute a tax on marijuana sales, with proceeds funding programs to help communities impacted by the war on drugs. It doesn't require states to legalize cannabis, however, leaving regulation up to state lawmakers. Okay, but we still have to deal with the issue of allowing cannabis businesses to have bank accounts. The Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act was created to address that issue. So what is it? A separate bill being drafted in the Senate, the CAOA, would also end the federal ban on cannabis and give state-compliant cannabis businesses access to financial services like bank accounts, business loans, and credit card transactions. So does Joe Biden support legalized weed? During the 2020 presidential campaign, then-candidate Joe Biden promised to decriminalize cannabis use and automatically expunge prior convictions. According to Biden's campaign website, no one should be in jail because of cannabis use. The site promised that, as president, Biden would support the legalization of cannabis for medical purposes, leave decisions regarding legalization for recreational use up to the states, and reschedule cannabis as a Schedule II drug, so researchers can study its positive and negative impacts. All right, so how do Americans feel about legalizing marijuana?
In regards to, the MORE Act, decriminalization, and I think a big thing here is the whole social justice part of this. Listen, the best thing, Sarah, would be, full legalization here. That would be the best thing. If you come back and look at it, 91% of consumers want medical cannabis to be legal. 62% want it, from a standpoint of adult use. So it's something everybody wants. And if you come back and look at the size of the business out there, by 2030 expects to be a $100 billion business. If it didn't legalize, it would be half that. So I'm not sure why, and with all the regulation in place, why this shouldn't happen. It's basically being held up by, Congress, being held up by Senate.
According to a 2021 Pew Research poll, 91% of Americans believe cannabis should be legalized to some degree, 31% for medical use, and 60% for both medical and recreational use. Only 8% of respondents said marijuana should not be legal at all. So what's the difference between legalization and decriminalization? Many states that have legalized marijuana initially decriminalize possession of a small amount. Broadly speaking, cannabis legalization means passing laws that allow the buying, selling, and possession of marijuana, usually with restrictions on the age of the consumer and the amount purchased. Decriminalization, on the other hand, typically means that violating certain marijuana laws can still result in fines or other penalties, but not criminal charges or jail time. Okay, this is my personal opinion on this issue, and there are two issues here. One relates to cannabis, and the bigger issue relates to the conflict between state and federal laws. This video is about cannabis, so the conflict between state and federal rules is something I'll come back to in another video. When it comes to cannabis, there's no evidence that I'm aware of that indicates that it's any more dangerous than alcohol. When you combine that with the fact that 91% of Americans think that cannabis should be legalized, it's obviously something that should happen. If Congress fails to pass this bill, it'll be the 1,000,000th example of representative democracy failing the people. If politicians refuse to do what the people want, then we have to take the power away from them. I've created a listing on the One Direct Democracy platform so that we can develop ideas about how we can improve the MORE Act. You can add your own ideas or vote and comment on ideas from other people. You can also create your own listings for people to vote on. It's a simple way to get used to using the One Direct Democracy system. The link's in the description. So that's a summary of the key issues. If you could vote on the MORE Act, would you vote for it or against it? Let me know in the comments. The reality is that we've reached a point in time where representative democracy no longer serves the will of the people, and the issues that made direct democracy impractical have been solved. That's why I created One Direct Democracy. It's a movement for upgrading the global democratic system by taking power away from politicians and putting it in the hands of the people with direct democracy. I've created the technology, a framework for direct democracy, and a specific plan for how to make it happen. And we don't have to convince any politicians or powerful people to do anything to make it happen. We have the power to do it on our own, we just have to decide to do it. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, or you want more information about me or One Direct Democracy, check out the other videos on this channel and the links in the description. Direct democracy is the purest form of democracy. Representative democracy is an outdated, blunt instrument.